Oh my gosh. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so like Mariella said, thank you all for being here and joining us for this. We're gonna do some introductions as well, just go a little bit more into kind of our backgrounds and who we are and what we're doing. So my name is Emily Arkfeld. I am one of the social emotional behavioral learning specialists for Nebraska MTSS, like Mariella said, and we really are kind of a new position, and our goal is to help districts across the state of Nebraska implement social emotional behavioral learning into their MTSS systems that they hopefully already have going on. But also we know that it's just a really big need right now. It always has been, and this kind of pandemic has amplified that. And so we are trying to get the information to districts the best way we can. And so doing things like this and some other little things to try and support all of you in the work that you are doing. So my background is school social work, and I love our team and the background and the experiences we come to hopefully help support you guys along the way. So I will let the other two ladies introduce themselves as well. So Jill, if you would like to go.
Thanks. Yes, I'm Jill Gunther, another one of the social emotional behavioral learning specialists with Nebraska MTSS, and I serve regions 3 and 4. So we're all divided up by regions throughout the state to support the ESUs and the schools within them. And my background is both a speech language pathologist, so initially, and then special education department head.
And I am Mackenzie Rydell, and I'm the third SEBL specialist. I primarily serve regions 1 and 2, which is the southeastern side of the state, so Omaha, Lincoln, and the surrounding areas. And my background is in school psychology. So we're going to get started. Emily's going to kick us off, and if you have questions, we'll have time at the end, or you can also put it in the chat and we'll be keeping an eye on that.
Thank you, ladies. And I always forget, I'm region 5, so I'm the panhandle. So we cover the whole state. All right, so we're going to just kind of start first with connecting mental health and school climate. And then because we are Nebraska MTSS, we are obviously going to talk a little bit about our multi-tiered approach to how to address school climate. We know that if we can bring in a comprehensive school mental health system to our schools, it really just covers all of those supports that will be helpful to students in becoming their best selves. So that social emotional learning, mental health promotion, well-being, and then reducing kind of that being preventative. So much of our society is reactive. And so how do we be preventative in reducing mental illness for our students? And mental health is a continuum. There is nobody who is, they are completely mentally well, and there is nobody who is completely and 100% mentally ill. We all fall somewhere in that continuum, and it really depends on their mental wellness and our protective factors versus our mental illness and our risk factors. And so you can see some of those on this slide, but then this next slide goes into that just a little bit more. So on this slide, we kind of have it split into child, family, school, and community, and some of those risk factors that our kids come with, and those protective factors that they might have, the family, both, and school and community. And really, we don't have a lot of impact on kind of what kids are coming with their family. So either the protective or the risk factors, but we as a school and a community can really put in a lot of those protective factors that will help that child be mentally well, and have those good social emotional skills and those communication skills. So those things that are protective factors for them individually. So we're going to go just kind of a little bit more into depth about how do we build up some of those protective factors within our schools for our students. So what does our youth mental health look like right now in the state of Nebraska? It's not great. It's not great across the country. We have that attorney generals, who came out just saying that our mental health for our kids is not doing well. And I'm sure all of you know that it's at the forefront right now. That the NSEA survey of educators that just came out at the beginning of January showed that 84% of our Nebraska educators say that they are seeing an increase in student mental health concerns. Children's Hospital of Omaha kind of put out their own statistics recently, Dr. Vance, and he said that they're seeing admissions for self-harm are up 33%, and they're using more severe methods, and that youth seeking support for eating disorders is up 70%, which is really big. There's kind of that like controlling what they can control. And I think the biggest one kind of standing out to me, at least, is that youth suicide has more than doubled in the metro area between 2018 and 2019, and it is now the leading cause of death in both 10 to 14-year-olds and 15 to 19-year-olds. So I think that suicide had been the third leading cause of death for many years for that 10 to 14, and so now we've jumped back up in that. And while his statistics are Omaha metro area specific, he does believe and see that that is kind of across the span of Nebraska. So why do we care about this in the schools? Research has shown that of the youth who receive mental health services, 70 to 80% of those access them in the schools. It is easier for them to access. They have the relationships there already. It reduces some barriers for them to get those mental health services. And so it's a great place for students to get that support. They're 6 times more likely to complete mental health treatments in schools and in community settings for all of those same reasons. When we have positive school climate, which impacts student mental health, as we're going to talk about this whole hour, learning improves, school safety improves, bullying decreases, and that their academic performance increases by about 11 percentile points. And so we kind of have this silo here because so often we see, well, we know all of these things: behavior, social, emotional well-being, mental well-being, academics, culture, climate, all of that is just interconnected. And I think we all know that, but unfortunately, sometimes we still address those things independently. Like I was just thinking back when I was in the schools, I had students who would be seeing me for mental health, social, emotional reasons, but they'd also be getting in trouble with the dean, and we were not talking. And so where we could really come together and support these kids, they were getting consequences, not knowing what I was working on, and I was working on things not knowing that they were getting consequences. So we really need to kind of just build our systems together. Not only is it better for our students, but also then it reduces that time and effort demands on the educators who are already have ridiculous time and effort demands on them. We are we are MTSS, multi-tiered systems of support. And so we think that addressing this in a systematic way is obviously best for everyone. And research shows that that is to be true. And really the best long-term benefits occur when we really take care of that at that universal tier 1 level. So putting in things like social emotional learning, school climate programming, psychoeducation for everyone, positive behavioral supports, that universal screening. And then, we tier those supports as we go for kids who have higher needs. And so you can kind of see that there, kind of how that breaks down. This is from NASP, Mackenzie, is it National Association for School Psychologists? Okay. So they have a lot of great content they put out. So we borrowed this from them, but really just shows how we take care of all of our students, whether they are general education or special education students at that core level. And if we really build that up, then we can address those higher needs more intentionally and more impactfully. So what is school climate? School climate really is everyone comes in with their own experiences and perceptions and background and social emotional skills, and they use those, they rely on those to make relationships and have values and goals and norms. And then those organizational practices and learning and all of that kind of builds that whole climate together. So really an easy way to think about it is climate is how does it feel, which makes sense. We talk about climate and that's like warm, cold, all of that. So how does the climate feel in your school? Are you welcome? Do you feel you belong? Do you feel that you are seen and people want to have you there? Versus that culture, kind of how does it function? So those culture are the bigger things. They are harder to change. But a bad school climate or a good school climate over time, if it continues in the same way, can impact that culture. It just doesn't change. Culture doesn't change as fast as climate can change with the right supports put into place. I'll give you a minute to read this quote. I don't need to talk at you the whole time. But we really liked this because it kind of goes back to that. There is no, like back to those silos, I think that there is no one that is the starting point for everything. Social emotional learning impacts school climate. School climate impacts social emotional learning. Climate impacts academics, and climate impacts behavior, and behavior impacts climate. So everything is intertwined here, and we can't just cherry pick one thing. We kind of have to look at the whole big picture, and how can we improve all of it. And so now we're kind of going to go into more specifics. We're giving you this general overview of school climate. And I know I talk really fast, so I apologize. So we gave you an overview very fast of school climate, but you guys are all in education. You have this information. So now we just wanted to kind of dive down a little bit deeper and talk about the 3 domains of school climate. And then we really want to just give you some resources to take back to work on improving school climate, some immediate things you can do or give to your staff or your educators, whatever your background is, to help kind of improve that school climate as possible. Okay, so kind of address this a little bit. So everyone comes in with their own backgrounds, perceptions, values, and then that's how they interact with other people. And then those interactions help build others' social emotional competencies and our own social emotional competencies. And so when we're building those positive social emotional competencies across, so staff and students, staff is just as important, if not more important than students, because you can't teach what you're not doing yourself, or you can't teach what you don't know. So if we've got that good basis, then that impacts our teaching strategies and our standards and all of that stuff, which in turn makes this, reduces bullying and violence and increases academic performance and student buy-in and all of that, which then again increases that school climate. So again, kind of everything I've said, but in a nice little image of how one kind of addresses or impacts the other. So this is from the National Center for Safe and Supportive Learning Environments. This is kind of their school climate definition, and then how that breaks down a little bit further. So they have engagement, safety, and environment. And I'm going to Jill's going to talk a little bit more about each of those and their definition. So I won't go too in depth with that. But this is from NASP again. Again, they have lots of wonderful resources. So if you ever need anything, check them out. But we know that when there's a positive school climate, academic achievement goes up, mental and behavioral health improves, overall school success is good. And it also reduces teacher burnout, promotes that teacher retention, and it can enhance parent-student partnerships. So again, all great things for any year, any school year, but really right now when we are struggling and our teachers are burned out and they are having to make 1,000 extra decisions every day, making schools a place that they want to come and feel respected and appreciated and heard, helps them just be bought into like, yes, this is where I want to be, and yes, I'm making a difference, and yes, I'm going to continue to do this. So if you want to, so assessing school climate is a bigger step. Our resources that we're giving you are really just kind of those immediate things you can take back tomorrow and be like, I'm gonna try this in my classroom and see how this goes. But to really kind of take a look at what your school climate looks like and figure out those pieces that maybe we need to spend our attention here, and we're really struggling here, or gosh, we have really got this going on, and let's focus here and just build this because we're obviously doing something right here. So if you want to assess school climate, you really kind of have to, we've got plan and align back and forth, because you want it to align with your your school and your district vision to make your plan. But then your plan also helps you align your school and district vision. So those kind of are intertwined. But you need to plan how your data will be collected, stored, analyzed, shared, making sure that you're assessing multiple dimensions of school climate, not just one. Obtaining input from a variety of groups. You can't just ask your teachers how it feels or your favorite teachers how it feels, because that's not going to give you an accurate depiction. Looking at staff and students and parent engagement and community and all of that, and see what they have to say, how they feel the school climate is. Doing it in multiple ways, so kind of on that potential data sources. You can just gather your school data that you already kind of have at your fingertips, but using focus groups and doing interviews and observations and surveys and self-assessment. So using all of these different areas, allowing some of them to be anonymous input if possible, so that they feel that they can be truly honest in their responses. And then making sure you're selecting evidence-based assessment tools. And we have, at the end of this, we have a handout for you, and we have a link. I believe it's to the Nebraska's Department of Education. They have a couple evidence-based assessments on there. So we have those links available for you guys, but just kind of wanted to give you this brief overview of what does it really look like and what does it take to assess your school climate very intentionally. Okay. I'm going to take a drink of water. Jill is up.
Perfect. Thanks, Emily. So you guys saw this visual. Emily showed it briefly. These are the 3 areas that impact that positive school climate. And so they are engagement, that we have there first, safety, and then environment. And so we're just going to kind of dig a little bit deeper into each one of those, give you some examples and some resources to go along with each one as well. So the first one that I'm going to talk about is engagement. And the things that fall under engagement are relationships, embracing diversity, and then school participation. And engagement really is about building those relationships. So building those relationships with amongst the students, amongst the teachers, the families, and with the school community as well. And so that's really about building those. And that school connectedness piece goes along with that embracing diversity and the school participation as well. Emily, if you want to go back to that last slide for me, you're fine. So relationships, embracing diversity, and school participation. So that school connectedness. So when students feel that connection with their school, it's really going to build that school climate. So anything that they can do to, that teachers can do, that staff can do to build those relationships, get to know those students on a different level, get to know their interests, take the time to, attend different athletic events or activities or things like that, and really teach those students that they do have that connection to school and that they have adults there that care for them, that they have adults that are there for more than just those academic pieces. And then just also that school participation piece. So school involvement, so activities, athletics, school mentoring, things like that. Anything that facilitates that participation, that youth development, things like that. And any time that we can get families involved as well is going to help build that school climate. Okay, you can go ahead. Thank you. So just things to remember when we're talking about relationships. So we're all models all the time. And that's something that we just have to keep reminding ourselves. And we really need to think about and consider like how we're talking about our colleagues, how we're talking about other students, how we're talking about our school or our district in general, because we are the models and we're what brings that positiveness or negativity, how we interact with others, how we're interacting with our colleagues, how we're interacting with parents. And even when we come and we're having a bad day, how we're handling and how we're modeling that bad day. How are we handling those strong emotions that we're having? It's everything from our body language to our tone of voice. So just a good reminder there. This next one, so 3 SEBL practices really fits under that relationships idea. And so we're going to talk a little bit about each of those practices. And so that just helps build those relationships. And so the first one is welcoming inclusion activities. The second one is engagement strategies. And then the third one is optimistic closures. And that little visual there on the side is just a great resource. It's something that you could print out, hang in your classroom or by your computer, but it's just good reminders about different ways to build relationships with kids. We all have those kids that are just tough to crack and tough to build those relationships with and get to know. And so these are all just great reminders of some different things to try. So the first one, so welcoming inclusion activities. And so we have a great resource. It's a slide deck packed full of different welcoming inclusion activities that you can take and utilize within your classroom right away. So there are slide decks with, like I said, lots of different slides that have. This is just a snapshot of one of them. So it has that morning check-in, an activity for captioning a picture, a reflection. Usually it's just a little video clip, and then a poll of the day and a share out or circle activity. So that's just a great way to start your class each day. So just another way to get to know them, to build those relationships, and just a good bell work activity. The next one, so pulse meters, is another great welcoming inclusion strategy. You may have seen feelings wheels are another great one. But this is something that you could post in the classroom. You could have individual ones where they're on the student desks, but it's just really important for students to be able to identify those feelings, be able to have that language. We all have strong emotions, and just taking that pulse of the classroom to kind of see where your students are at each day, and just having that check-in with them. And so it's super important to be able to build that connection. And this is just another way that you can do that with them. Next one, so a 60-second relate break. So this is an example of an engagement strategy, which also builds those relationships as well. So this is just an example. So taking 60 seconds, so super quick, and just having a question that's not related to the lesson that's being covered or the curriculum that you're discussing, but it's an opportunity for students to really get to know their classmates. Sometimes in classes that doesn't always happen. And so this gives them the opportunity to kind of get to know each other on a different level. And so the teacher throws out a question, gives them 60 seconds, and they can go around and ask a classmate or different classmates that question just to learn more. This is another one that we will have all of these linked in our handout at the end as well. So hopefully you guys will leave here with lots of different resources that you can just take and use to help you build that positive classroom environment, which in turn builds that positive school climate. So would you rather questions? So watch TikTok all day or watch YouTube all day? I guess we should have maybe started out our presentation with that question, right? So this has just lots of different just random questions, gives you an opportunity to get to know students. It allows the students to get to know each other just on a different level. So something fun to do. So lots of different questions in that would you rather slide deck as well. This is an example of a way that you could close out a lesson or close out the day within your classroom. So some optimistic closure strategies. So this is where you could just utilize a deck of cards, and then it has some reflection questions that go along with whatever card they may pull from the deck. So for example, if they pull a card that's a heart, something from the heart, how did you feel? What did it mean to you? You could change up those questions, you could match them up, but just another idea where you could simply just use a deck of cards as an optimistic closure. This next slide, all of those little Post-it notes just have a variety of different optimistic closure activity ideas. And so you guys may have heard a closing circle, one word. And so as you're just wrapping up the lesson or as you're ending the day, just each student comes up with one word. These are things that you could also use with colleagues. So during staff meetings or PLCs or whatever it might be. But a closing circle, just one word. What one word would you come up with to describe this lesson or describe this day or describe this new initiative or whatever it might be? So that's one way. journal entries or exit tickets, other great examples of optimistic closures that you can implement. Word clouds. So there's a ton of apps and websites that you're able to create free word clouds. So students can type in a word or 2 or 3 words, whatever it might be, or maybe it's an answer to a prompted question. And then the website builds that word cloud based on the responses and the number of responses that were entered. A gallery walk. So as students have completed work, so maybe students just get an opportunity as they're closing out the lesson or the day to be able to see other students' work throughout the classroom. Expert talk. So maybe groups of students were divided out into small groups and each one was assigned a particular topic to research, to discuss within their group. And then they identify, maybe one person that's the share out person. So they're the expert for that particular topic, but that's just another great way to end an activity. A think, pair, share, or maybe a sticky note parking lot. And then the 2 on the side, I feel like are 2 a little bit less common ones. So that just the quick rating. So maybe just kind of holding up a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 as far as like how students are feeling about the lesson. Maybe it's, during the staff meeting as well. So how they're kind of feeling with things, what questions they might have, and being able to provide feedback for the teacher through that way. The 3, 2, 1 feedback. So identifying 3 things that they learned, 2 fun facts, and then 1 question. So maybe writing that on a sticky note or a piece of paper, or sharing with a partner to just kind of give some feedback there. So all examples of some great optimistic closure strategies. This is a great quote that just kind of goes along with that building relationships piece. So I'll give you a minute just to read through that. So great quote. We love that one. All right, so moving on to embracing diversity. So an inclusive school climate really refers to the environment where all students have that sense of belonging. They feel as though they are supported socially, emotionally, behaviorally, academically. And they, like I said, they have that sense of belonging regardless of any of those things that you see on the screen there. And so that really is what an inclusive school climate is. This is a graphic that we put together. We feel like it does a great job, really just kind of outlining embracing diversity. So exercising fearless leadership. So really thinking about leadership within the building and providing that relevant professional development. Do teachers have what they need? Are we giving them the tools, the resources, the professional learning that they need in order to embrace diversity? We also linked in a challenging microaggressions. And so that is a great resource where it outlines just kind of what microaggressions are. It does a great job just outlining some of the different microaggressions and explaining that. So that's a great resource that is linked in our slide deck. And I believe we also put it in our handout as well. Engagement, so family and community engagement. So making sure that we're communicating with our families and we're involving the community as well anytime that we can. Questioning with a social justice lens. So a couple great questions going along with that, but just making sure that we're looking at things through a social justice lens. Being culturally proficient, so looking at alternate perspectives and practicing that self-reflection. So good reminders there. And then ensuring representation. So this is another one that we wanted to link some reflection questions as just something that you could use within your departments, within your schools, to create those schools and classrooms where we're ensuring representation of all. And then just stepping outside of your comfort zone. So good reminders there when we're thinking about ways to embrace diversity. Okay, so both of these activities are activities that go along with identity. So what identity is it's the experiences, it's the relationships, the characteristics, and the values that make up us as a person. And it's how we define ourselves, how others define us. We all have unique identities. We're all different. We all have different experiences. But knowing about our identities is part of self-awareness, which is one of the SEBL competencies. And so it's important to have that identity work so that we can acknowledge those things, how we're unique, that we all have different experiences. So these are two great activities that we wanted to share with you as a way to do that. The first one there is an identity wheel, and that has some reflection questions there in the middle as well. So a great resource as something where you could just work to identify that social identity. The second activity, so the iceberg activity, so that is one where you could use the visual that we have here, or you could have students build their own iceberg. So with that water line of visibility, so what's under the surface and then what you might be able to see above the surface. And then just allowing individuals to kind of reflect on that, to ask those questions, to have those conversations and talk about those differences and the difference in experiences, because that just, it leads to a more inclusive environment when we have those conversations. Anything else about that, Emily?
The only thing that I would add, and I'm not seeing the chat, so I don't know if Mackenzie's putting things in there, but that it's just something that we should, that it's nice to do for ourselves as well. So yes, you can do it in your classrooms, but as adults and individuals, it's also nice to kind of take the time and look at our own identity and how that impacts us and our interactions in the classroom and with our coworkers.
For sure, yes. Great reminder that all of these things, honestly, are not just things that you can do within your classroom, but doing within your small group PLCs or departments or even whole buildings. Our next slide is another example. So just because poems, so we linked a template there. And then there's also a picture example of a completed one, but just because poems, they also are a way to explore identity. Really exploring stereotypes and allowing students to work through their own identities. So they get to, through this poem, kind of debunk stereotypes by stating the positive traits about themselves. So just another great way that you can do some of that identity work and really explore that self-awareness. Okay, moving into school participation. So we have just kind of the puzzle pieces that make up school participation. So that student connectedness that I talked a little bit about earlier, that sense of belonging, and that they have staff at the building that care about them. And so those pieces are family engagement. So providing those resources for families, extracurriculars, so athletics, school activities, any student-led club, anytime that you can get activities or clubs that generate different levels of interest. So kind of thinking outside the box to get all students involved, Special Olympics and mentoring and peer work, all great extracurriculars where students can just learn more as well. Community-based partnerships is another one. So mentoring, that civic engagement or that volunteering piece, and then professional development. So professional development for staff on classroom management and just being able to give them the skills and the resources necessary to promote that positive school climate. The next one is safety. So we're going to talk a little bit about emotional safety, physical safety, and then substance abuse. And so when we look at safety, safety is really defined as involving schools and those activities so that students are safe from violence, they're safe from bullying, they're safe from harassment, and then that substance abuse as well. So a couple statistics or a couple quotes here. So high levels of school attachment and connectedness are positively associated with student perceptions of safety, and feeling safe at school was the strongest protective factor for student well-being in the first year of secondary school. So just great reminders there. Relationships are going to equal trust, which are going to equal safety. This one, so these are just, just some reminders that go along with safety. So the importance of building that leadership team and making sure that we have student voice on that leadership team as well. When we're building the school improvement work and things like that, making sure that we're including all of those important voices on that team. And then just some good reminders as far as safety. So engaging in dialogue about race, about gender, about religion, sexual orientation, and other identity, as well as students with special needs. So educating along all of that and being sure to have those conversations, addressing bullying, and really building that school environment that is built on the staff there, modeling that respect, modeling that empathy, and modeling that kindness. Environment. So environment is the last one. So included underneath of environment is physical environment, academic environment, wellness, and discipline. And so looking at all of the different learning settings, looking at classrooms, looking at just the supports available as well. So we have a few pictures as well that we'll kind of go through, but as we're thinking about each of these things, it's important when we're thinking about environment that those physical surroundings should be appealing to students. We want those, clean facilities, things like that. That all feeds into that school climate as well. It must be inviting. So it must be inviting to not only the students, but also the parents or the community members, the teachers, and thinking about how we can do that within the environment. When we're thinking about the academic environment, so one way to just kind of boost that and improve that is using our colleagues. So I think it's something that we don't often remember to do, but maybe inviting a colleague that maybe has a plan time, or when students are at PE or music or whatever it might be, to come in and say, hey, can you watch this lesson and give me some feedback? Can you talk to me about things that I'm doing really well? Can you talk to me about ways that I could improve? And really getting that feedback from our colleagues, but then also going and watching our colleagues within the classroom as well. I think that's a huge thing to boost that academic environment that we don't often use. Is we have so many great people just at our fingertips that we don't often utilize. So these pictures, sorry, Emily. So these pictures, so just, we thought these did a great job of just kind of showcasing some great physical and academic environments. So the first one there has a variety of different seating options. You can't see it super well unless you blow it up, but there's photos of the kids' faces on the windows. There's also their artwork and things like that. So just allowing those students to have that kind of voice in the classroom, because they get to see their work displayed. They get to see them and feeling connected within their classroom. The other ones are great examples of classrooms that are colorful, classrooms that are organized. They're clean. They promote that strong climate. That top right-hand one is actually some bathroom stalls that were decorated. So just a fun way to incorporate that, and maybe even allowing students to be able to do that. Murals on the wall is another great way to enhance that physical or academic environment. So maybe it's that the art teacher completes it, or she works with the art students to do a mural on the classroom wall, but all things that are inviting and engaging, ways that we can build that in our environments. Wellness is the next one. And one of the great resources, again, we linked it in our handout, but if you guys aren't familiar with Classroom Wise, I would encourage you to go check it out. It is a free resource. There are, I believe, 6 different modules, about 45 minutes to an hour long, and they focus on the areas of promoting mental health and well-being for students, as well as understanding and supporting students experiencing adversity and distress. But great resources. You could kind of pick and choose different modules or pieces of modules that you could do within your school as some professional development. So that is a great resource. As far as disciplinary environment, so just good reminders here as well. So restorative practices, Nebraska PBIS are reaching out. We work very closely with our PBIS counterparts. And then another resource for you guys, so the 10 questions for ensuring equity in school discipline is a great resource just to kind of get you thinking outside the box. And Emily, I don't know if you want to pull up that resource just to show them that as well. So just good think abouts. I believe there's 10 reflection questions when you're thinking about equity in school discipline. Okay.
Okay. This is me. So just kind of wrapping up here. So actually, before we kind of wrap up in our last few slides, Mackenzie, were there any questions, or do you guys have any questions that we can kind of talk about while we're here?
I didn't have a question, and I'm here. I feel I'm not in the education field at all, so I'm very privileged to be able to be here and see what you guys are doing. But as a parent, you know, at least here in Lincoln, in the Lincoln public school system, I have always felt very welcome and very, you know, that climate at the schools with my families or with my family. You know, we're just like the basic family, you know, that we don't have any special needs or any, you know, super smart kids. We're pretty much, you know, right there at the medium. And unfortunately, one of my kids do have that, you know, the 70% percentage that you were talking about, the food. You know, she has, what do you call, oh my goodness, I just forgot the name, but you know, that is driven through her anxiety and everything. But one of my concerns is that there are so few counselors at the schools and there's so many kids. There is no possible way that you guys can provide all these services to all of them. So I just want to say thank you, because I do appreciate and I do understand all the effort that you're doing. So I just wanted to say that.
I'm going to echo that, because the three of us are no longer in the schools. And so it's hard. Like, I know for myself, it's hard for me to sit up here and say, like, do all these things, because I know that our educators, our counselors, our teachers are doing literally everything they can to help support our students right now. So I echo what you say, and thank you for all of you who are continuing to show up every day and to just put your best face forward and do what you can for our students and for your fellow colleagues and coworkers, because nobody has the answers right now. And we're all just doing the best we can.
Just to add on to that, so we know that our students are having mental health concerns. And so one thing that we like to advocate for is addressing mental health at like the whole school level. And so having like a homeroom time, just like a 5-minute little spiel or just a short video to show that raises awareness of mental health and what is mental health, and trying to break the stigma and educating them, even just like little bits and pieces, because the goal with that is that then if they notice they're starting to feel a little bit off, they would reach out for help with their friends or with a teacher or a support staff in the school before the problem becomes to the level where they would need like intensive intervention. And I know that is a lot easier said than done, and finding time in the school day can be really difficult, especially in a year like this year. And so it's kind of that predicament of we know that students have the need, and also we want to try to prevent some of the needs from happening from the whole school level. And that I do want to also emphasize that we don't want to talk about doing it at a whole school level in a way that makes teachers feel like they have to be counselors, because we know that counselors have specific training and can take some more of that emotional burden on, because that is their role in the schools. Whereas the teacher, though they do act as a sounding board and they support some students emotionally and socially, that's not the primary role. So it's just it's a difficult thing to address, and we know the need is high. So thank you for sharing your story.
And I just have one more thing, just really fast, because I think you guys are the proper target for me to say this. But for example, in the case for my daughter with her anorexia, that was the word that I couldn't remember. She had to be pulled from some of that nutrition classes that they had for the health, just because her psychologist did not think that it was appropriate. So they reach out to LPS here in Lincoln, and they're trying to see if there could be a different way to just providing that health nutrition in just with a different perspective. So then kids have more of a positive view of it. And I'm not saying that this is what caused it or anything like that, but just, just because of her mental health status, it was not the best, for her to be in those. So that was very interesting to me. And yeah, I just wanted to share that with you.
Yeah, and Mackenzie, that was a great point, and thank you. And to your point, Mariana, kind of back to that tiered that we showed, I think the very top is like those community partnerships. And so that's why those are so important, because either they can help educate the in-school staff support for those students and kind of help them look at their curriculum and how do we help do this, or those partnerships, then the schools can refer out to those individuals who need that extra support. So those partnerships are really huge. And I think so many of our districts and our communities do a fantastic job in doing that, but there's always room to grow. So thank you, yes, for sharing your story. And like Mackenzie said, it does not fall on the teacher's shoulders. But if you are promoting a climate in your classroom where it's okay to talk about your feelings and to do some of those check-ins, and that it is just commonplace to say, I'm having a rough day, or I need to use this coping skill, then our students learn that that's okay. And that, like Mackenzie said, can then hopefully have those conversations with other adults or supports in their life that can kind of get them the extra help that they might need. So yeah, everybody's doing the best, but really building that kind of core level, like Mackenzie was saying. Are there other questions? I do want to show you our resource and handout so you know kind of what you're clicking through. Okay, I'm gonna pull these up really quick. So we kind of just tried to break it up. So we got our general school climate here, lots of great resources, national organizations who are doing the work, who have way more expertise than we do. Kind of easy to peruse websites there, our NDE school climate resources. Just some of the general mental health, so those classroom-wise, the National Center for School Mental Health, NDE School Mental Health has some great links as well. And a family tip sheet for advocating for school mental health. So we know that we need the resources. We know that we're lacking them, but that doesn't mean that parents should not be advocating for them for their students. So helping kind of give them the language to do that. And then we've broken down, we've given you those engagement strategies and some additional resources, safety and environment. So all of that is up there for you guys to have. And then, so just kind of wrapping up, we know that school climate is a something big to take on. It doesn't just happen overnight, but we tried to give you some of those low hanging fruit, those quick wins that you can take back and use right away, in the hopes that over time you can work on some of those major projects that require that planning. So a school climate survey or something where you get your district or your building on board to really make those shifts in a positive school climate. And we certainly don't want to give you anything that is just a time waster. We know that your time is limited, so trying to give you things that give you the most bang for your buck while you're working on building kind of that bigger project. If some of this sounds like something you're interested in doing more intentionally or building into your system, we obviously have to promote ourselves a little bit. So this is kind of our workshop series that we have through Nebraska MTSS, where we really try to focus on leadership teams who can, we know you guys know this and you are hungry for these resources and how do I help my students and give me stuff. But we know the leadership teams are the ones who really kind of can have the authority to move these things forward. So we ask for leadership teams to come and we kind of give them the background of social emotional behavioral learning. Why is it important? How will it benefit you and your students and your staff? We really focus on the adults. Like we talked about, we have to look at them first and build up their social emotional competency so that they can then teach their students and build that nice foundation for students to flourish. And then we look at our core, so social emotional behavioral learning, like Mackenzie said, how do we build that up? Access for everybody across all areas. How do we give them what they need? And then we kind of come back together after a while and say, how is that working? What does that look like for you? Do you guys have any more questions? And then helping them build those tiered supports from there. So it is a four workshop series, really diving into the data and how are you building this into your system and making it kind of a one-stop shop so that you don't have people pulled in all of these directions to be addressing all of these things. Jill or Mackenzie, do you guys have anything to add to that? Okay. And also, because we have to promote ourselves, we are super excited about our Coffee Connects that we are starting at the end of this month. We really, when we got into this position and we kind of were connecting with other states and going to conferences and seeing what people are doing, we're like, oh my gosh, like we really need to bring people together and we need to have this conversation. And so we want to just kind of provide a platform for anyone across the state who is working to build social emotional behavioral learning into their schools to come to get some education, to get some resources, but really to kind of build connections across the state and ask questions and get support. And how are you doing this? And how did you implement that? And I've got this going on and have you address that? So want to just provide that opportunity. We have two different ones based on either your availability or your time zone. So we have 7:30 to 8:15 and 8:30 to 9:15 once a month through the end of the school year. And we really is kind of, it will evolve. So we really want it to be what the educators, what all of you need. So our first one, we've kind of got a plan, but we will adapt to whatever the needs is to make sure that everybody is getting the support and the resources they need from that.
And those will be recorded as well. So if those timeframes don't work for you, we will have them recorded and then we'll get that information out. So you'll still be able to access those resources and that conversation.
Mm-hmm. So this is us and our information. So if you, we have it by the ESUs up here because usually that's a little bit easier. But if you have some follow-up questions for us or interested in kind of what that workshop series looks like or other trainings and presentations, please reach out to any of us. We are ready and willing and would love to help support you in the work that you are doing. I'm going to stop sharing. Okay. So I think that's it from us. Mackenzie, I know we'll put the slides in there, I think, which has all of the links, the hyperlinks to everything. So if you guys don't have any more questions, I believe you're free to go. 2 minutes early.
Thank you, everybody.
Mackenzie,
Yes.
Lori Brady from ESU4. Sorry, I look really bad because I'm homesick.
Oh, same.
But I'm wondering, I noticed that you serve ESU4. I'm wondering if you would be willing to meet with our counselors at some point. We meet every Thursday morning, and if you could talk with them about some of this stuff.
Yeah,
Okay, I will send you an email and see what we can set up. So
perfect.
thanks so
Sounds
much.
good. Thank you.